right, well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Nat Nevada panel hosted by SIX. We're joined today by 4 industry leaders for a discussion about the current state and future of mining in Nevada. I'm pleased to introduce Sean Major, the CEO and Director of Cortus Metals. We have Anthony Moreau, CEO and Director of American Eagle Gold, Andrew Pollard, President and CEO and Director of Blackrock Silver, and Morgan Alekstrom, President and CEO of Silver Hammer Mining. Before we begin the discussion, I want to remind you all that you can submit your questions at any time on the Q&A panel on the right-hand side of the screen, and we'll try to get to them after the panel portion of this. And as always, the summit is being recorded and will be available to watch afterwards on six.com. But before we kick things off, let's get to know our panelists. Sean, if you can just introduce yourself and your company.
Okay, thank you, Dasha. Well, Sean Major, I'm the CEO of Cortus Metals, Inc. And Cortus Metals is one of the companies of the Metals Group. So Metals Group has a record, I guess, of 20 plus years in the industry. And we've worked in jurisdictions all over the world. And our venture here in Nevada, which is where we're focused, is started in 2019. We went down to look for projects and spoke to some royalty companies, looked at their terms. We also spoke with a prospector and project generator down there named Clay Newton, PhD geologist in structural and tectonics. And he had a portfolio of projects that he had worked up that were grassroots, early stage projects with a big concept. So the Metals Group is a group that has different commodities, different jurisdictions, but it has some things in common that we look for, and that is a large land position, be a first mover of some kind in the area. And we've got built a lot of value off of compilations as well in historic mining areas where you've got sort of fragmented land positions that have come together through a downturn. So we're able to cobble together data sets that are useful. So looking at Nevada and this group of projects, we really liked the cost base compared to picking up projects in the mountain ranges where you've got a couple of 100,000 ounces or a few 100,000 ounces defined. But it's a small area with little upside or some complications over the years. We wanted fresh stuff. So the first mover aspect was satisfied with this portfolio. The main reason being that he's focused in the basins. So Nevada is about roughly half and half mountain ranges and basins. And most of the production over the last 200 years has been in the ranges. So very little time and money have been spent in the basins. Where money has been spent there, it's usually an extension of existing or known deposit. And these are, producing mines that they follow it into the basin, which is covered. It's literally a bowl with gravel in it. And the bedrock is covered by this alluvium. But they follow a structure into the basin and find a deposit there as well. That has happened on a couple of occasions, but people haven't looked for them, or not very many people have looked for them with much success. So this fellow had a methodology that included some, not brand new, but innovative techniques, geobotanics, where you look for certain plant growth on that thrives in an area that's throwing off the right elements. Combined, that's sort of a poor man's soil geochemistry that we combine or prove up with soil chemistry programs of our own, some gravity surveys, and invest a bit of money to work up drill targets. It takes us about $100,000 on each project of exploration to get to the point where we can drill it. Drill programs we're expecting 2,000 to 4,000 meters on each project, and those cost $1 million to $2 million, depending on your combination of diamond and RC. Our goal is to have as many of these projects ready for producers in Nevada, of which there are many, to replace their production in 2 to 5 years. So we're starting to see transactions happen, but I think this is going to accelerate. And our goal right now is to find junior partners and private groups that want to invest in these initial drill programs and help us work up multiple projects with potential for big discoveries.
Great, thank you so much. And Anthony, can you tell us about American Eagle Gold?
My name is Anthony Morrow. I'm CEO of American Eagle Gold. So our main asset is called Golden Gate. It's everyone's heard of Barrick and Newmont, two biggest gold producers in the world. They're in Nevada is probably one of the best jurisdictions in the world to be. Carlin area is the best area of Nevada to be. Produce over 3.5 million ounces of gold a year there. We're right next to the future growth of Newmont and Barrick. We're on the southern part of the Cortez Trend. The most recent discovery by Barrick was there in Gold Rush 10 years ago. They just came online recently. We're bordering Barrick Cortez facility, which has produced on average 1 million ounces of gold since 1996. On our team, you have a great property, but if you don't have a great geologist, it's like having a Lamborghini and not being able to see. So our geologist is named Mark Bradley. You may not have heard of him, but you've heard of Gold Rush, and he led the team that made that Gold Rush discovery. He joined us because he sees the same opportunity on Golden Gate they saw in Gold Rush 10 years ago. We started drilling recently. We did geophysics that kind of showed us where we wanted to drill. So we started drilling in late December, and we're drilling right now, and assays can be coming out in the spring. So we have a great geologist, great location, and we're drilling now. And we also have a property in BC where we'll be drilling, hopefully in the summer, looking for a copper gold underground porphyry deposit. So two things. We're in a great jurisdiction in Nevada, drilling right now, but also drilling for something that we think could be another robust deposit and another commodity allows you to diversify your holdings. So again, American Eagle Gold traded on the TSXV under AE, drilling now.
Great, thank you so much. And Andrew with Blackrock Silver.
Yeah, thank you. Great to be here. So Blackrock Silver, we trade on the venture under symbol BRC and on the OTCQX under BKRRF. We picked up about 2 years ago and consolidated one of the largest silver districts in North America, and certainly one of the highest grade ones in what's called Tonopah, Nevada. It's in the Walker Lane Trend, about halfway between Las Vegas and Reno. In fact, the highway that connects Vegas to Reno goes right across our project, and we're drilling on both sides there. We started drilling it in June of 2020. We were about $10 to $20 million market cap at the time. By the time we released our first assay, we added over $100 million to our valuation on the back of drill hole number 1, which hit about 30 meters of a kilogram per ton silver equivalent. Since then, we went from what was planning to be a 12 to 14 drill hole campaign. We've done 110,000 meters of drilling in the last year and a half, making us one of the most active junior mining exploration companies in Nevada. And from a silver basis, we'd probably be one of the top 3 most active silver exploration programs globally over the last year and a half. We've gone from first drill holes in the project to we'll be delivering a maiden resource estimate by the end of Q1 here, so probably some point in end of February, early March. And I think that's sort of where we really get that next big re-rate potential. The last time we got that re-rate was on drill hole number 1. I'm looking forward to the maiden resource because that's where we step out of obscurity, and I think people will really be able to get a sense of just what we've got under the hood here.
Great, thank you. And last but not least, Morgan, can you introduce yourself and Silverhammer Mining?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm Morgan Lekstrom with Silverhammer Mining. We trade on the CSC under HAMR and on the OTC HAMRF. So we only started about 7 months ago, really brought our assets in late June, one of them, and the other 2 in Nevada. in September, and we're focused on past producing silver mines, past producing silver jurisdictions that have that large exploration potential, but also near-term production potential. So we want to be concentrating on both. So the idea of the company is, you get a mine, you build it, and you fund the next ones. So we have our main asset right now. One of our main assets is in Idaho, Silver Strand, that we took from being an existing underground, rehabilitated it, drilled it out, proof of concept that there was strong gold and silver mineralization below the existing workings, which had only ever been mined down to 90 meters. Most of the mines in that area are 1,800 plus meters deep. And then we picked up these two assets in Nevada, which were highly prospective, past producing assets. First was our Eliza project. That's in Hamilton. That's the largest silver rush in the Western US at the time, or in the US at the time, 1860 to 1870. And no one had gone back there. High grades up to about 18,500 grams a ton. And then we are now going to explore it. We're planning to do some geophysics, big sampling program here starting the next few weeks, and then drill targeting and drilling this year. The other asset is Silverton. It's about an hour from Mr. Andrews' property there in Tonopah. And it was a past producing silver mine as well. One half of the property we now know is a silver past producing property, but the other half of the property it looks like it has pretty high potential gold and very similar to Kinross's Round Mountain property. So barring that, we also have a very experienced management team. Myself, I'm a mine builder. I've spent many years working overseas with companies like Freeport-McMoRan in Indonesia. I've worked at the Oyu Tolgoi complex for a number of years. I've worked with Golden Star Resources in Africa. So you can kind of get the point of our team. Adding people like Ron Burke, the ex-vice president of Centerra, ex-vice president exploration for Silver Standard. But what we're trying to do here as a company of not only just exploration, but that near-term production potential.
Great. Well, welcome everyone. So let's talk about Nevada. What is so attractive about the state of Nevada from an economic and business operations standpoint? And I'm going to pass it to you, Anthony, first.
Well, it's easy to get permits, which is a lot, took us about a month and a half to get our permits for Nevada, which is great. I think it's, most beneficial for producers who often take, 5 years to get permits. I know Nevada is a lot better that way. Also, if you want to be in any location, you want to be in a democratic society, and you want to be away from animals, people, water, and trees. So that's most of Nevada for the most part. So it's great, and really big systems hang out with big systems, and no area in the world, specifically the Carlin area where we are, where there's so many large deposits. That's why people want to be there.
Great. Andrew, anything to add?
Yeah, well, listen, the best thing about being down there is the fact that, from an economic standpoint, there's gold and silver, but ultimately you need lots of that for there to be green. And there's commodities galore down there. From everyone thinks about the Carlin for these big, massive, huge gold deposits. You've got not only some of the largest gold mines in North America there. You've got some of the highest grade gold mines up there too. But you've also got silver. It's a massive copper district. It's a massive lithium district. I mean, the resources are there. It's pretty much everywhere you go. I mean, you're probably walking over some sort of ounces or tons in the ground, which it makes it a hell of a place to get started. And as Anthony said, then you've got the actual framework that allows you to easily, exploit those, from getting permits to getting people. I mean, it's sort of the best of both worlds where you've got rule of law, you've got ease of access, you've got treasure trove of commodities. I mean, it's about as good as it gets from a global perspective. That's why the Fraser Institute ranks it as the number one jurisdiction globally to be in from an investor attractiveness index. So, number one's hard to beat.
Fraser Institute, though.
Morgan, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, for us being focused on the Western U.S., obviously Nevada was that natural extension, being that, like Andrew and like Anthony said, it's a generally easy place to work. But one of the things I think people forget about Nevada is that it had all these silver rushes, it's had gold rushes, and obviously they found, the Cortez trend, the Walker Lake trend, like large trends, the Carlin trend. But there's a lot of areas around similar to what we're looking at where they went and mined and people just walked away and forgot. I mean, how many people do you know that have been to Eureka, Nevada, or Mount Hamilton, or any of these areas? You pass through these small towns and they're entrenched in mining. I mean, the community around mining in Nevada is such that it focuses on it. I mean, it's not, it's not a massive play for anything else other than, some desert. And when you think about how you want to develop a project, all the permitting, obviously we talked about that, but I think the people are probably one of the greatest assets there, given that there's been 100 to 200 years, 150 years of mining. Those become generational families, similar to what we have in Idaho as well. But you have generational families, which means you have generational experience and generational knowledge. And when you look at geology, that's what you want, especially in that area.
Great, a lot of good points. Sean, do you have anything to add?
Building on what they've said, I guess we see Nevada as being a target-rich environment. So that is for projects, but also for partners. And when you're doing what we're doing, which is working up some projects quickly with a timeline in mind for buyers, it has many buyers, mid-tier and senior. So I think you can put together a pretty good business plan for mining, unlike a lot of places where you're kind of on your own. There's a ready-made industry there for you. So it's a stable place. We've worked many places that aren't, and many of those don't have nearly the prospectivity that Nevada does. And Nevada is also one of the most stable. They're with a focus right now coming from the Fed, I guess, on jobs. You look at Nevada, and outside of Vegas, Nevada and especially the rural areas are all dependent on mining for work in their economy. And the counties are dependent for fees and revenue and taxes as well. So they've had their mining laws and tax regimes in place for 100 years, 100 plus years. There's been no change in the mining law since the 1800s. They're slowly improving their online capability there, but there's still a competitive advantage for having local presence and knowledge. So, you've kind of got the best of both worlds: modern exploration, access to capital, and still a bit of a competitive advantage for the more the knowledge, local knowledge.
Dash, if I could add one thing, if you just look at the statistics. There's I think about 360,000 active claims or permits right now in the U.S. Through BLM, and half of them are in Nevada. So that kind of speaks for itself. Just to talk on Fraser Institute really quickly, I think it's a complete sham, started by Philip Morris and Rothmans to support or to oppose anti-smoking legislation. So 276 people filled out the surveys for 77 countries. I know people 5 years ago that filled them out just to try and get their countries a higher ranking. So we don't really put any support in the Fraser Institute, just putting that out there.
All right. Well, would you guys say, is there any other jurisdiction in the world that you could compare to Nevada, since this was a great jurisdiction? I'm going to open the floor to anyone who wants to.
There's plenty of tier one jurisdictions. I mean, ultimately rule of law is first and foremost. I mean, Quebec's, obviously at the top of the list for a few years. BC's doing really well. Australia's decent. I mean, but the mining's a global industry, and depending on what you're looking for and where you're looking for it, every jurisdiction's got its fleas. You just want to go to one that's got the least amount of them, right? So, I mean, you're going to get headaches everywhere. It's just going to be different headaches. I like Nevada just because it's, easy to get to. You're either going to be set up in either Reno, Vegas, or, Elko. Good hotels, good, the only security that you need there are the ones that are, in the casinos or escorting me out of the all-you-can-eat buffets. And it's just a nice place to be. I think I'm going to be a Nevada guy for the rest of my career. I'll hand it over to
you don't want to find a deposit and lose it because there's some disruption in the local government. So I 100% agree with you, Andrew.
Anyone else have anything to add?
Well, if you want to look at another jurisdiction, as they mentioned, Western Australia, same as Nevada. It's a great country. U.S., Australia, great countries, democracies, also not really close to people, animals, trees, and anyone that's nearby, they're there because it's a great mining jurisdiction. So access to labor also is important. So Western Australia is another great place. But besides Canada, US, Australia, I don't really think you want to be anywhere else.
I can definitely tell you, someone that's worked in a lot of these other countries, including pretty much every continent other than Europe. It's definitely reassuring when you, like Andrew said, from a security standpoint, you can walk around, you are trusting that your equipment's not going to be damaged or stolen or a number of other things. Working with the government is very transparent. The rules are transparent. Working with either the BLM or the U.S. Forest Service, like, people want to get things done in Nevada, and I think those progresses that we're seeing, especially in Nevada, are translating to other parts of the U.S. as well: Arizona, Idaho, a number, New Mexico, potentially. But there's a lot too, I think, in the U.S. in general, compared as well in Canada and Western Australia. But I think from an ease of work, people are generally wanting to come into these first world or developed nations and work there because of the security and the safety of their person, but also their jobs.
Great, thank you. So Morgan, I'll toss to you. What are the factors that you think make a junior mining company successful in Nevada?
Well, I think there's really only two for us at Silverhammer, and one is the potential deposit. That is first and foremost, and the management team having experience in and around that area, including your geologists, like Anthony said earlier, having a key geologist to the area and having good technical people in the background that know the area are probably one of your key aspects to working in Nevada. But when you evaluate the project, what is the actual large scale potential of that? What do you want to do with it? And as a junior miner, you're generally looking at probably one of two paths. You're looking at either developing it to a resource to sell it, or you're looking at developing it to somewhat of a resource to build it and keep going. But as a jurisdiction to build a junior mining company, I don't think there's many other ones in the world that are better.
Sean, what do you think makes a junior mining company successful in Nevada?
Well, look, the economics in Nevada are fantastic. You can, a small deposit with a low grade can be economic there. So as an explorer, you can in our case, we're looking for something that has potential to be very large. But if we find anything and it's on a small scale, then that's a win, or could be a win as well. So I think, it has a lot going for it. You won't have your deposits or assets taken away from you, as if you've spent time in the industry, you know that can happen. And it happens a lot in some jurisdictions. So that won't happen in Nevada, and we've got ways to go. Your strategy has multiple prongs and possibilities. You can go very linear and develop one asset on a timeline, or in our case, you're developing a portfolio, and I think we'll be able to find ways forward on all of the projects one way or another. But we'll start with the first thing, which is make discoveries and go from there.
Great. Anthony, any thoughts?
I think two things: you need to have patience, and you need people, on the ground that know the local contractors. Like I said, there's 180,000 active mining permits in Nevada. There's a lot of people there. There's a lot of money there, and there's a lot of competition, especially with Nevada Gold Mine, some of the big copper producers as well. They've pretty much taken all the drillers out. So when you do a drilling RFP, you need that 12 months runway to be able to wait for every driller to be available. Because if you need to drill in 2 months, you'll be paying a lot more than anywhere else in the world. If you're paying a lot more than anywhere else in the world, you better be sure that your targets are the best ones possible. So, patience and really having someone there that understands the land. My old boss always says that the best footsteps, the fertilizer of the farmer. So that's why it's so important to have a local really running your site. Our head geologist is from Elko. He's a cowboy. He knows everyone else there. Helped with our permits. Certainly helped us with our drilling team.
Great, makes sense. And Andrew, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think having someone that's a local down there that's actually able to, get stuff done is the biggest difference that makes the difference. Because as Anthony said, I mean, just getting drillers is hard. I mean, not only they've got their pick of the litter, so not only do you need to show you have the financial resources, but those drillers are still going to go wherever suits them best. And one of the advantages we have over a lot of other companies down there is that we're literally footsteps away from an actual town. So I mean, our drillers, we have no issues. We've got 3 different contractors down there last year, all going at the same time. Companies, just because they could walk to A&W on their shift and get a root beer float. They can go get pizza or Burger King or whatever, and it's not like they're having to go to Timbuktu. But having someone, and we're lucky. Our executive chairman is running our project down there. He used to head up exploration for Placer Dome, and he knows how to scale up projects, and he can crack the whip. But he knows everyone from inroads to which assay labs to use to get you to the front of the line, to which drillers to call, to which geophysicists, to whatever. And it's having that little black book of people you can call on when other people are complaining about turnaround times for this or that. You can say, okay, well, instead of going to this group, we'll go to this group, and plan B, C, D, E. And it's just having that sort of flexibility that you only have from being on the ground down there. And so I think having the locals, it's a must.
How are you guys doing in your drilling costs in terms of, have you guys been to other places? How have you guys found it?
Well, we use a combination of RC and core. I mean, RC drilling's cheap as chips for us. So what we tend to do is our first go around, we did our scout drilling using that, and then we followed it up with core after that. But it's about $300 a meter for core. RC's $20-30 a foot, so it's actually pretty cheap. But I mean, man, since we started drilling, we've probably put about $40 million into the ground. But luckily, we've been hitting it out of the park, so we'll have a maiden resource to show for it. And we're this isn't a bulk tonnage operation. We're drilling high grade veins 200, 300, 400 meters below surface. It's been our drill targets. The resolution's gone up the more we drill, obviously, and now it's pretty much a sure thing that when we drill, we're going to hit something.
Well, it's kind of a benefit and a curse where we are, because we're right next to Barrick and Newmont. So, for example, with major drilling, we had them lined up to come to site, and it kept on getting delayed and delayed and delayed. But these drillers have got screwed for so long. As a businessman, I don't blame them, because in reality, that Barrick contract's going to be with you forever. So you're going to stay with them and not come over to us. But it kind of hurts the smaller drillers, especially in the Carlin area, like where we are. So that's kind of our experience there. In terms of the RC where we are, Andrew, it's funny, we couldn't even get an RC drill. Could not get one. In fact, we did HQ, but the ground's hard to drill at. So what we're doing actually now, we're just triconing the upper play rocks and then doing HQ in the carbonates.
Yeah, it's the scales are definitely tilted in the bigger companies' favor down there, because obviously if you're a driller, I mean, going from small account to small account to small account, it's quite transient. So you get more love. To get their attention, you need to show that financial resources, and luckily we were able to, when we hit that first drill hole, we had Eric Sprock calling us the very next day, and raised another $7.5 million, and the drillers who wouldn't have taken our call back then, all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, you guys want some rigs? Okay, sure, yeah, here you go. So
we see Barrick next door, and they keep on hitting drill holes right next door to us, and we're kind of happy because it's next door to us. At the same time, we're like, stop, because that means you're keeping the drills on site. So
yeah, it's annoying.
All right, well, I'm wondering what sets your property apart from the other exploration companies in Nevada. We'll just go around, starting with you, Sean.
Well, fairly easy question for us, because the project areas were all based on a concept. It's a pull-apart basin concept. It's done up by a PhD geologist who's spent 30 years looking at all of his data. We're looking for things in the basins where not a lot of other people are looking. Shallow cover is the key. So we're looking at the foot of the mountain, and when you're looking for large-scale discovery in Nevada, that's something that can come anywhere, I suppose. But when you're in the range, you're looking at exposed rock and outcrop. And, people talk about jasperoids all the time in exploration down there. You don't have the benefit of that for when you're looking in the basins. So our methodology is leading us to some good drill targets. And I expect that if we make these discoveries, then people are going to pay a lot more attention to the basins. So the benefit in our case is if we're somewhat of a first mover in that way, and that's something that you can't say very often in Nevada. So that sets us apart. And not to mention, we have about 20 projects and about 2,300 claims. So it's significant land position. And when we talk to contractors, they're interested as well because of that scale, I guess.
Right, absolutely. Anthony?
For us, it's our geologist. Having a geologist is great, having a good geologist, but really what makes a geologist great is making a prior world-class discovery, which means they've had the experience, they know what to look for, and helps even more if they made that discovery, 4 kilometers away. I always tell people, if you go down the Golden Gate and you look north, well, it's about a 45-minute walk. And if everyone's been in New York City here, at least I have, and if you go from the Empire State Building and look at the World Trade Center, that's the same distance we are from Gold Rush, the biggest mine to come online last 10 years. So we have that geologist. Our property hasn't been proven yet, which is why we're able to have it. That's why we're able to drill it. But it's close as it can be to those other world-class discoveries. Pipeline got discovered in 91. Then Cortez Hills 10 years after. 10 years after that, Gold Rush. So we're on a collision course for another big discovery. Our company is essentially, we're essentially the exploration arm for Barrick. So I think our location and our people. And Andrew, what's funny, I think our VPX probably worked for your executive chairman in the past at Placer.
Yeah, he would have, yeah.
So both great geologists. I think we have that in common. And everyone here looks great anyway, so.
And Andrew, I'll pass it to you next.
Yeah, well, the best place to find a mine is right next to an old one. And what we've got in Tonopah is, everyone thinks of Nevada for their big gold endowments, but Nevada is known as the silver state. And it's a state because of the big silver discoveries. The Comstock lode discovery in the 1860s is what actually helped fund the American Civil War and got Nevada seats in the Senate. But it was the Tonopah discovery that really, really established it and solidified its statehood there. And Tonopah itself was cut short because metals prices tanked in about the 1920s, early 30s, leading into the Great Depression. And we're literally the first group to go back in there since production shut down like 90 years ago. And it's effectively been hiding in plain sight all this long, and we're just picking up right where the historic miners left off and just drilling extensions of known veins. And we're showing the historic miners left a hell of a lot more joy and goodness for us. So, there's many more chapters to be written on this really consequential district down there. And the best part is it's just been waiting there for us to tee off. And I mean, as I said, we started hitting it out of the park from drill hole number 1 and haven't looked back since. And, we've only just gotten started. So, that's what sets it apart is just it's amazing that it's been hiding untouched for so long, literally halfway between Vegas and Reno with, some of in one of the most active, jurisdictions on the planet.
Absolutely. And Morgan.
I could definitely resonate with what Andrew's saying with our Eliza and our Silverton project, and being the Eliza project was 1860 to 1870s, right around that Comstock lode time. I mean, that was the great silver rush right after it. I mean, they went there, they mined out over 40 million ounces with picks and shovels. Like some of these mines only go down, 20 meters, 30 meters max. They're not deep mines, but they were very high grade. And if you look back in the old text, I have a pretty interesting old book. It talks about them walking away at 3,000 grams a ton because the metal price back then was, 90 cents, $1. right? So you start talking about walking away at 3,000 grams a ton, and everyone here knows that if you start drilling 3,000 grams a ton over any distance, you're in very good territory, as Andrew is very well aware. The other interesting thing about Nevada, in the sense that why people go there, like especially for us, is there's not only silver and gold, but there's also copper potential, right? There's these large copper porphyries there that can be buried under like a CRD type deposit. And that's what we think we're finding at our Eliza project, is something that they'd scraped the surface of silver, and part of it, we picked up the lower part where we still think there's lots of pods of silver, but we're seeing this potential copper porphyry right below us. And that's something that is very overlooked when you talk about Nevada. Like Andrew said, Silver State, you hear about Barrick, you hear about these large companies mining gold. How many copper mines and pure silver and copper mines do you hear about? Not many. And I think there are quite a few. And to really talk about what Sean hit on in the basin, I do believe, with our Silverton project, we look at that and we go, it's covered. It's alluvial shale. It's covered right up. And you can see how it dips. Like there was not technology back in the day. There was not the means to go and discover these deposits in these areas. And now there is. And people like the people on this call are going back to these areas or going to new areas and using technology to have these potentially great discoveries. So there's a lot of discovery potential still in Nevada. I had one geologist, which I'm sure all your geologists would know, say to me, he said, there's a lot of moose pasture, but underneath that moose pasture, there's a lot of potential.
Great, thank you so much. I just wanted to go, before we open the floor to attendee questions, just go around the virtual room, and just see if there's anything you wanted to highlight to investors that you haven't had the chance to talk about in this discussion. I'll just do the same circle, starting with you, Sean.
I think that our company has spent about a year evaluating the portfolio that we acquired. And we're now at the stage where we're talking to potential joint venture partners to fund drill programs. So, the maturity of the company is coming fast here. We're watching the economic trends with a lot of interest, but the day-to-day is not a big deterrent, or you don't get too excited either way, up or down, because the basic scheme or economy that's being laid out in front of us here for the next 2 to 5 years is consistent with our plan. Gold producers are making a lot of money and have been for a decade. Since their last round of acquisitions, they've been fixing their balance sheets and building their war chests. We have a plan to retain significant positions through royalties, shares, and cash payments, and have multiple projects ready for buyers in the time frame that they'll be looking to produce or replace their production assets. So, I'm very excited to hear the stories of everyone else here as well, that Nevada is an exciting place, and as long as there's a lot of people like that operating there, then we'll all have a lot of directions we can take this.
Great, thank you. Anthony?
I think we covered everything. Nevada is a great place to be. We want to be a safe jurisdiction. We want to be in Canada, Australia, or really Nevada. And I think everyone should make their own investment decisions after doing some careful research. Look at where the asset's located. Look to see how much of the money that is invested in the company is actually going into the ground. I know we're putting a lot of money into the ground. Certainly Andrew's company is. He just talked about how they put $40 million into the ground. And just look at the team. I always tell my father, you don't invest in a company unless you know who's running the company, who the VPX is. Those things are very important. It's the people, it's the property location, and how much they're drilling. American Eagle is doing a lot of that. We're very excited about our prospects, and we're currently drilling. And you want to look at what catalysts are ahead. In reality, this is a lottery ticket for everyone, all the investors, all the companies. And what I'm trying to do, I know what these other CEOs are trying to do. It's like finding a needle in the haystack. Our job is to make that haystack as small as possible. And I just touched on the things that make that haystack smaller. And we're trying to make the probability of success for American Eagle Gold as high as possible. That's what we're doing at American Eagle Gold. So we're drilling, we're in Nevada, we love the jurisdiction.
Great. Thanks. Andrew, what can shareholders look forward to? Anything you want to communicate?
Yeah, listen, we're staring down the barrel of probably what's going to be our biggest catalyst since we hit on our very first drill hole, and that's our maiden resource estimate, which is on track for completion this quarter. Before we get the resource out, we've got a whole bunch of drill holes pending assay, which are the very last of which will form the basis for this resource. So we've got drill results, which would be, I'd say, imminent, and the resource within a month to 2 months from now. And I think that's going to be the biggest single re-rate potential that we've had since we started drilling this thing. So I'm very, very excited for that. And from there, I mean, Windsor are back. We've already got First Majestic in as a strategic shareholder, but I think, you know, I'm not sure if we're going to be predator or we're going to be prey this year. But either way, this resource is going to put us in a really, really good position, and it's not a bad time to be looking at coming along for the ride.
Great. And Morgan, anything you want to tell investors?
Yeah, you know, it's for us when we started Silverhammer, the goal really was to concentrate on the Western U.S. Obviously, with one of our flagship mines being in Idaho, we were able to pick up these projects in Nevada. And by doing that, we are now able to start drill targeting and drilling in Nevada in very short order. I'd say, you know, if any comparison in Nevada, we're right where probably Andrew was before he hit his first drill hole with the Tonopah district. So for us, we have that large potential, that large re-rate potential when we start drilling our Nevada assets, especially at Eliza and especially at Silverton. And I think you're going to see some interesting results coming out of the Silverton project here in the near future, and look forward to what we're going to be doing at Eliza in the Mount Hamilton district. You don't get many opportunities to pick up things that people, you know, pick up toys that someone dropped 140 years ago and go back to them and say, well, why did they drop this? And they're in pristine condition and ready to be used again. So we're really looking forward to what is underneath the ground there, and dumping a lot of money, hopefully, into drilling and putting our money where our mouth is, but also that large potential that Nevada offers.
Great, thank you. All right, well, we're going to open the floor to some of these attendee questions that have come in. Deborah is asking, what risk is there from the Democratic governor of Nevada? Is there a danger of economical restrictions or taxes being increased? This is open forum, whoever has an
I'll attempt an answer there. Nevada is so mining dependent and has been thought of as a mining state for so long that I think the Biden government in particular is not in a position to mess with the economy there. I think they're going to continue to support mining, even if it doesn't satisfy the green side of their party. There's just the practicality, and we've seen what they did in the Gulf of Mexico, honoring the lease process there. There may be some small changes, but I think everyone here is used to working in jurisdictions where they've been adding these things for a long time. So whatever they throw at us, it'll still be a worthwhile place to be. And, you know, the governor has also shown that they're sensitive to criticism from the Republicans. So we know that the Republicans are very strong mining supporters. So, you know, maybe the biggest threat is from the Interior Secretary, who has a lot of concerns over First Nations and traditional lands or monuments. That may affect some areas of Nevada. Fortunately for us, we're not in any of those areas. But as far as the taxes go, I think that's a manageable risk for a mining company.
Taxes are a good problem to have. It means you're making money, and it means you already developed your mine. You made a big resource. So happy to pay taxes someday for us.
Yeah.
Anything else to add? Okay.
No, I think, you know, Nevada's a purple state at the end of the day. I mean, they've got a Democratic governor. That's, you know, that's all influenced because of the, you know, Las Vegas and that county down there. But literally the rest of the state is like a different world. And they know who butters their biscuit, and that's the mining industry. So, yeah, you know, that's something I don't think they're going to really upset that. Certainly, especially in an election year too. I think you're going to be with the midterms coming up. I think it's going to be business as usual for the foreseeable future.
We have a question here for you, Anthony. What is the end goal of American Eagle Gold? If you find something, is it to build a mine?
I'm not going to lie. I could probably count on my hand how many even major mining producers are actually good at building mines. Two of them are actually right next door to us. Our goal is to, create value for shareholders, create a liquidity event, make a discovery. But we're not in the mine building business. It's tough enough to find a discovery. We're world-class geologists. We want to, make a discovery, maybe to find a resource, but eventually sell it to someone else. I would never say we want to build a mine.
All right, thank you. This question is for all of you. What do you see as the biggest problem that the mining industry will encounter in the next 5 to 10 years?
I'll jump in. I'll call it the silver tsunami. It's the you're going to see massive retirements, and mining's an industry that really hasn't treated their people all that well over the many decades, because it's just feast or famine. So I think you're going to see brain drain of the industry from lots of very experienced people in their 60s and 70s. And I mean, these are, I know 80-year-olds in the industry that could beat the shit out of me. They're strong. These guys have lived in tents and traversed mountains, and, they've dealt with everything. But, the mind is there, but the body just might not be soon. So you're going to start to see this loss of people knowledge, and it's not really being replaced all that effectively. So the companies that will succeed are the ones that have fostered their talent and, are able to, I guess, attract the knowledge base that's required. But I think talent's going to be the biggest issue.
Yeah, it's definitely to talk about that a bit. When you talk about the human capital side, I mean, there's the talent on the geology side, which we obviously know is waning very quickly. Not a lot of younger people are going into resource geology, more environmental geology type things. But also the lack of understanding in a generation. I mean, I do not know, my background is mine building, is being in the mines, and, from everything from the engineering side all the way to the production side. And I don't know many people coming in wanting to operate a jackleg, jump on a stoper, have white knuckle and listen to their dads talk about how their hands don't work anymore. We're going to need to invent our way out of this. And the reality is I tell the story every now and then. A good friend of mine is a tech person, and he's done very well in tech and worked for a very predominant company. And he's probably one of the smartest people I know. And every time we talk about mining, he gives me this blank stare. And he's 30 years old. I'm 36. I'm technically a millennial. And he gives me this blank stare, and he has no idea what I'm talking about. And he's from a farm originally. And he's like, you know what, man? Doesn't it just you just make a big hole and this is kind of like the disaster it turns into? I'm like, no, that is not mining. And I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding in a generation that needs to change, because if it doesn't, you think metals are going to skyrocket from industrial growth. They're going to skyrocket because there's going to be no one there to pull them out of the ground.
All right. Anything else to add before we move on to the next one?
I'm worried about gold long term. I know people have bullish fundamentals behind it, but you look at ESG and you look at mining. If you really look at what's best for the environment, most of gold's put back on the ground, so you're essentially disturbing the earth just to put it back on the ground. So once you have the money, you'll start to really realize that. Is there really a reason to mine gold anymore? Why are you doing that? You think oil or coal is really dirty, but at least that material is getting utilized. Gold isn't getting utilized. It's stuck back in the ground, so it really doesn't make sense. And that's where blockchain kind of comes in. So if you can actually define a resource and actually put it on some rails and actually allow people to own that gold without taking it out of the ground, I believe that's really the future. So still creates opportunity for the exploration companies, but maybe some sort of a roadblock for the mine builders, et cetera.
Interesting. We actually have another question here from Ramo. What strategy do you explorers have to make sure your first hole of exploration are not disappointing, your first holes? Is there any strategy to lower that risk?
I'd say, well, the more data you have to work with, the better. But generally you get rewarded most when you make a blind discovery when people aren't expecting it. I mean, the chances of hitting taking an exploration, bunch of claims and turning it into a mine. It's like 1 in 10,000, right? So the odds are scaled against you from Jump Street. But it's a risk. It can be an expensive treasure hunt. But it's about getting the odds tipped in your scale, and that's just data driven. And having a good geologist helps. Having a good project helps. Being on an established trend that just might be underexplored, that means you've got all the regional data, that helps. But ultimately, it takes a lot of grace and a lot of luck to hit it.
Yeah, I would add to that that something that was said earlier. The old adage that you find mines where there's gold or where there's an existing mine. In our case, we started with 250 prospects, narrowed that to 20 or so. And the basis for that was, some technical criteria, of course, primarily that. But the final call comes down to practical considerations, like who are the surface owners, and can you improve your odds? And so a lot of our portfolio right now that we're running with are next to known deposits or existing mines. So I think that's, when you're dealing like we are in large scale things like structures and tectonics and the formation of these deposits, being next to those existing mines and deposits is probably the best strategy. We can see where it continues from economic mineralization into our areas. So that's our method, or one of them.
Great, thank you. Just last question here before we have to wrap things up. Eric's just asking, what is each of your anticipation of the price of silver and gold in the future?
Well, I'll start. If I knew where gold was going to go, I wouldn't be in this business. I'd be trading gold. But I'm bullish on it long term. I think it's going to go above 2,000. It's just a matter of when. So yeah, I think we're sideways trading right now. If you look at from 2013, 2019, it's sideways trade. For 6 years, they're around $1,300. So I think we're going to sideways trade for a little while between the 1,750 and 1,900 band. But I think we're going to be posed for a breakout eventually.
Yeah, I think the easy money, the reason why gold and silver haven't really gone anywhere, I mean, they're doing historically very well. It's just the reason they haven't gone anywhere in relation to other assets is that there's been so much money, so much liquidity pumped into other things that, people are making money hand over fist in these meme stocks and Netflixes and Peloton and all these things. Well, guess what? With the Fed, signaling as though they're going to be hiking rates, that easy money environment is going to be over pretty soon. And I think that's what's going to cause these big pension funds and these big institutional investors to double down and start actually reconfiguring their allocations more into precious metals, more into safe haven assets, because the easy money's been made now. I think you're going to see the markets roll over just as they have to start the year. But I think what that's going to do is ultimately, you see everything gets treated like a stock. It's at first, just last week, gold and silver looked like they were going to go, and then everything got thrown out, baby with the bathwater. And now there's just a bit of reverberations. But I think similar to March 2020, when the market just puked the bed there for a bit, all of a sudden it took all that easy money was out of there. People were scared. They pulled their money off the table, and then they deployed it into gold and silver stocks. And you had like the mother of all bull runs that summer. I think we're set up for that in the next few months here once they start actually hiking, because all that expectation's built into the market now. I think you're going to start to see the big money move in, and it doesn't, gold and silver are very, very small industries globally. I mean, compared to the tech companies, for example, or compared to all other industries, it doesn't take much for these big funds to really change the course, and that rising tide is going to lift all boats. So I don't know what it's going to be, but I think gold is going to hit $1,900 before it hits $1,700. I'll put it that way. And silver's looking pretty good here. So I think now's not a bad time to be looking.
What's hilarious, I was in New York City in 2019 at Mines of Money, and gold's at $1,300, and we were just praying gold would go to $1,500 because a lot of our mines would be profitable. And now gold's $1,800, $1,850, and people are crying again. I think it's a pretty good price to keep some of these major miners profitable. And I think the gold gods are looking at these major miners and say, we're giving you extra $500 on the margin. If you guys can't make money now, maybe you shouldn't be in the business. So it's a natural way to just get rid of some of these inefficient drillers that invest in bad properties and just let their costs get out of whack. It's absolutely insane. Look at anyone that's building a mine right now. It's taking longer. It's cost hundreds of millions of dollars more. They shouldn't be in the business.
Yeah, unless you're B2 Gold. Unless you're B2 Gold.
B2's a great builder.
That's what I mean. Unless you're B2 Gold.
I was thinking about them today. They're the best builder. They should be a major.
They should be. I think Andrew, what you said is true. With silver and gold, generally, interest rates went up. Gold, silver kind of tanked. I think people are borrowing heavily on low interest and investing in high risk. And to what you said, it's going to come back to a safe haven. That's your gold. That's your silver. As the industrial use increases, we all know with silver, the industrial use is increasing by 2030. It's going to be exponentially higher than it is now. People are going to realize that things like copper, I mean, you've seen copper break out. They're saying it's going to test $5 soon. Like these are at historic highs because they're now being utilized and there's light coming to it. But the minute people start pulling money off the table because it's not low interest and their risk tolerance changes, that's when they go back to safe haven. And I think that's very soon. 1900 to 2000 for gold. I mean, I think you'll probably spike to 2100, but it'll definitely pull back and sit around that 1900 for a while. And silver, hey, I'm happy where it's at. And if it goes up, it's upside. If it goes down, you just got to figure out a way to make it work, right? I mean, traditionally, these are very good numbers. This is the most money majors have ever made. They're very profitable right now. Even given their stock performances, but their war chests are huge. They're making massive profits, and they're still pinching pennies. It's pretty impressive, actually, what's going on in the industry.
Yeah, and look, we've seen this week how much people are refocusing on the actions of the Fed, and the early advice that you're seeing from kind of retail investment advisors has to do with getting back to diversification and hedging. So, portfolios, whether it's a central bank or a personal portfolio, I don't think the recommendation has really changed away from 10%, gold and gold stock holdings. But people are underweight on that big time. They had it in other speculative ventures, right? Crypto, et cetera. So yes, there have been competitors for metals over the last year. But with all of the volatility expected this year, that's the definition of turbulence. I think there's a lot of advisors who don't know the ultimate effects of these changes. They're debating, well, what are the real rates versus the posted rates, et cetera, to figure out the impact of these of the Fed. But in the end, the best recommendation and the only clear recommendation I've seen has been toward gold and gold stocks.
Great. Well, that is all the time we have for today. I just want to thank you all so much for all your incredible insight and for joining me. And of course, thank you to everyone who joined and asked questions. If you do want to follow up with any of these companies, there's more information on each of their websites. I'm just going to quickly read them out, but you can also find them. American Eagle Gold is americaneaglegold.ca. Cortus Metals, cortusmetals.com. Silverhammer Mining at silverhammermining.com. And Blackrock Silver Corp at blackrocksilver.com. So hopefully you can reach out to them directly, and I'm sure they'll be happy to answer all your questions. Thank you again for your time today, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.